There's a lot of depth to Final Fantasy XVI's combat, much more than you might think after playing the free demo. I want to go in depth on aerial combos, special counter abilities, how to maximize your damage during a stagger window, and way more. Thanks to Square Enix for sponsoring this video. Check out the full game via the special link in the video description. Now, one thing I always enjoy doing in these types of action games is setting up aerial combos. It lets you beat down on an enemy while staying out of reach of other melee enemies, and if you unlock the down thrust ability and its upgrade, you can finish off with a fiery slam down that can easily hit multiple enemies. One quick way to set up an aerial combo is by making use of your trusty companion Torgal. His Ravage command, which is bounded down on the D-pad, will launch an enemy up into the air, after which you can quickly follow up with a Phoenix shift to close the gap and start your combo. The second icon you unlock, Garuda, also has an ability called Wicked Wheel that drags enemies up into the air with you to set up a combo, and you can use her Deadly Embrace to pull new enemies in while you're in the air as well. But obviously those tricks will only work when you have those specific icons selected, but there is a way to set up aerial combos with any stance, and that is with the Burning Blade skill. This one has you charge your blade with fire by holding down the attack button, and if you let go after the sword ignites, you'll release a powerful slam that knocks enemies back. However, if you ignite your blade, then jump and let go of the attack button, you'll perform an aerial burning strike, which is an upward slash that launches regular enemies up into the air with you. So you can use this attack to lift enemies off the ground, start your combo, and then end with a down thrust for an explosive landing. Don't forget to try and mix your magic bursts into your aerial combo as well, so by pressing triangle right after you hit an enemy with an attack. Not only will this add more damage to the combo, the blast on the final hit actually lifts you back in the air a little bit, allowing for more airtime if you need it. And upgrading Burning Blade as soon as you get the chance is smart as well, as this reduces the time needed to charge up your weapon. If you need time to practice these combos, you can easily do that at the Arete Stone in the Hideaway. Just access the Hall of Virtue and you'll be dropped in a training arena with a single enemy in front of you. Pressing the touchpad will bring up a huge list of options, including the ability to change the enemy you are fighting, add or remove Torgal, or make yourself invincible. For practicing combos, I recommend just leaving enemy aggro off and making your target invincible, which turns it into a training dummy that can't die and will never hit back. But if you need to practice your parry or dodge timings on a specific enemy, there's a pretty huge list of targets to pick from here, including mini-bosses like Minotaurs. Just don't forget to turn the aggro back on. On the note of mini-bosses, the best way to kill these as quickly as possible is by staggering them. You do this by emptying the yellow will gauge below their health bar, and once it runs out, you'll have a window of time where the enemy is stunned and you can just unleash your most powerful attacks. To get to this stagger window as quickly as possible, I made sure to always have Garuda in my active icons. That is because Garuda's Deadly Embrace actually has a second use, as it can be used to topple a larger enemy to the ground. This will only work if they are partially staggered, so once the will gauge reaches the halfway mark. You get both a visual and audio cue when the enemy is partially staggered, and if you press circle right after, you'll drag the enemy to the ground, giving yourself a pretty big window for a follow-up attack. I'll usually stick to Garuda and use Gouge, as the repeated hits will add up for a lot of stagger damage, almost enough to strip the second half of the will gauge and send the enemy into a full stagger. By the way, if you liked the video so far, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe, as we got way more Final Fantasy tips and tricks coming your way. Now, once you get the enemy into a stagger, it's time to unload with your most powerful abilities to deal as much damage as possible. And while it might seem tempting to spam a lot of quick abilities because you're doing damage in a limited window, you can actually mix in some flashier moves too. Because while the animation for the very powerful Phoenix ability Flames of Rebirth is pretty lengthy, it also slows down time while Clive is performing the attack. So this high damage nuke can be used during a stagger window without losing time to perform other powerful abilities. Now, this does not work for all abilities with a lengthy animation, like Gouge for instance does not slow down time. But as a general rule of thumb, any move that changes the camera angle, as you can see with Garuda's aerial blast here, will actually slow down time. Which means it's an excellent pick for dealing max damage during a stagger window. Using abilities on a stagger target will also increase the damage multiplier during the stagger window, meaning your next attacks or abilities will deal even more damage. Now, while it's nice to have a window where you can just wail on a boss without them hitting back, in most cases you'll actually want enemies to attack you. Especially the late game icons revolve around you dodging or parrying enemy attacks at the right time to really shine. A good example of this is Titan, who can block incoming attacks, attacks, or even parry them if you get the timing right, which sets you up for some very powerful counterattacks. So in order to get the most out of this playstyle, we actually want enemies to attack us. And this is where Taunt comes in. You might have overlooked this ability, which you can unlock from the start of the game for only 40 ability points. But it is incredibly useful for baiting out attacks that you can then parry with Titan to trigger those powerful counterattacks. You perform a taunt by holding R2 and pressing the touchpad, after which Clive will whistle and a red exclamation mark appears above the enemy that is taunted and will attack you. So a super easy trick that makes this Titan stance much more powerful, and many of the other late game icon abilities benefit from doing this as well. And on the note of counters, did you know that there are some abilities that work as a counter attack as well? In specific, it's the Phoenix ability Heatwave, Garuda's Rook's Gambit, and Titan's Raging Fists. They can all be used as a regular ability, but can increase their power if the first part of the ability is used to dodge or parry an attack. For Heatwave, it works if you block a ranged projectile with the first part of the attack, where Clive slams down with a fiery wing. Rook's Gambit has you dodge an attack instead with the leap back that starts this move. If you dodge an attack with this leap, the power of the subsequent attack is increased. And true to Titan's blocking playstyle, blocking an enemy attack with the first step of Raging Fists unleashes a flurry of punches, and it also slows time, so you don't need to worry about being knocked out of the lengthy animation. These abilities are all really fun to use, and as mentioned earlier, become even better if you learn how to use taunt in combat, so I really recommend adding them to your arsenal. And remember that if you like a skill but rather have the circle ability of a different icon, you can mix and match between them if you invest enough ability points. The mastery reward for every ability, so the second upgrade after unlocking the skill, allows you to slot it under any icon. So you can keep your Phoenix shift while also having the ability to block and counter with Raging Fist if you choose to invest enough points to master the ability. And don't worry if you are unsure if an ability is worth upgrading for this purpose, as respecs are completely free in the game. You can refund the ability points spent on a single ability, or even refund all your abilities for a complete respec. Furthermore, you have the option to lock certain abilities, which makes sure they stay unlocked even if you use the reset all abilities option. So switching out skills is super easy, there's literally no downside, so just keep trying different things until you figure out what works for you. Now, while we've discussed a lot of abilities that can make you stronger in combat, there's also an item that really helps. It's the Berserker Ring, and its description says that it temporarily increases attack proficiency after each precision dodge. It actually does a bit more than that, as it changes the animation for a precision dodge and slows down time, making it easier to dodge any subsequent attacks if an enemy is using a combo. And when reading the description, I thought it would simply increase the damage of my attacks, but it actually changes your attacks to the fiery double slashes you perform after using your limit break. So while you don't get the health regen you get if you actually use your limit break, if you can keep weaving precision dodges between your combos, you can keep doing these more powerful regular attacks for most of the fight. And even your ranged attacks are changed, as again, like your limit break, you now actually burst fire spells. So even your otherwise weak magic attack gets a little boost as well. The way you get this Berserker Ring is through the Patron's Whispers. This feature is unlocked during the story quest The Gathering Storm, and it allows Clive to gain a resource known as Renown from completing side quests. At certain milestones, you'll be granted an item or some materials, with only 85 Renown being required to unlock this amazing ring. If you want to know how to do that as quickly as possible, you can watch Jordan's video on that and more amazing unlocks you don't want to miss by clicking on the screen. And if you haven't tried the game's free demo yet, go check it out on PS5. Subscribe to not miss our upcoming Final Fantasy XVI content, and leave a like if you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.